Shalom, Yasharala. This is your brother Dawud from GMS Tampa Bay '07, coming at you with this here truth again. First and foremost, I want to give all praises unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakah, Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of great millstone that taught me this truth and that ruled well. And salutation and much love for y'all in pushing this truth and sincerity on the four corners of the earth and enduring afflictions. All right, I'm going to jump into this here quick little lesson dealing with Venezuela and basically America's still choking Venezuela out, dealing with this here famine. And also was briefly touching on, this is almost like a preview of Jacob's trouble, because these are our people down there in Venezuela, and these things are coming to America, But nevertheless, we're going to just jump off into this here article. It says, Organization of American States starts Venezuela's suspension procedure after a U.S. call. The members of the Organization of American States have voted overwhelmingly to start the process that could leave Venezuela's suspension from the Pan-American 34-state body, accusing Caracas is clamping down on democracy. At a session on Tuesday, 19 delegates representing OAS member states voted in support of the revolution that might lead to the suspension of Venezuela membership in the organization. Only 4 countries voted against the motion while 11 abstained. The resolution was passed by OAS General Assembly in defense of representative democracy, Reuters reported. It called for a summoning of an extraordinary assembly eligible to decide whether a country should be suspended. It comes a day after U.S. Secretary Mike Pompeo urged delegates to kickstart the suspension procedure, saying that it would send a powerful signal to Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro regime. Advocating for new, tougher sanctions to be imposed on Caracas by the 34-member body, Pompeo reiterated that the U.S. claims that the recent presidential elections in Venezuela won by Nicolas Maduro in a landslide were a sham, neither free nor fair. Only real elections will allow your government to be included into the family of nations, he said, accusing the Venezuelan government of full-scale dismantling of democracy. Maduro fired back at Washington, branding the OAS a useless organization that turned into a ministry of colonies of the American empire, with the U.S. pulling the strings of the OAS and is being geared against the revolutionary movements against the progressive people, independent anti-imperialist governments, the Venezuela leader argued. Okay. All right, before I finish off reading off this here article, I just want to stop and to put in on this. Now, what we have going on over here is, again, a lot of these stories, and I got to tell you the real deal, what's going on. All right, Venezuela, I believe, has the second largest oil reserves. All right, Venezuela has a lot of resources that America wants, and just like any other country that they want, they go in and they seize these countries, and they do it first. They don't go around putting American flags up in these countries. What they do is they go in and they have an overthrow of the government by taking over the media and spreading propaganda, and then they have so-called uprisings and try to overthrow the government. All right, and so what you've seen happen in Venezuela, starting a couple years back, was they started they basically, America went over there and started an uprising and a coup. Basically tried to start in a coup, but nevertheless, President Maduro is more or less trying to hold out for all of this, and he's trying to stand up for his people, but they're blaming him for trying to steal all the resources and the money and holding out on his people, so on and so forth, making him look like a bad person. But at the end of the day, America wants to go over there and take their oil, and their resources. All right. And so here now you see in America is trying to cut them off from these other nations, so that they don't get any trade, any imports, basically starving them out, so this country will collapse, and by doing this will force the people to go, like you see over there with all the famines and the hunger and all these things going on over there. The people are going to start looking at the president and the leaders and the government as corrupt politicians. And then what are they going to do? Go and try to overthrow their governments. All right. Making room for America to set up their puppets. All right. But it says, reading back up, go back up here. It says, Maduro fired back at Washington, branding the OAS as a useless organization that has been turned into a ministry of colonies of the American empire, with the U.S. pulling strings in the OAS. It has been geared against revolutionary movements and against progressive peoples and independent anti-imperialist governments, the Venezuela leader argued. Um, the U.S. has been a member of the organization since its established in 1948, around the same time that them damn Israelis got over there in that land. But nevertheless, this is another one of their little ruling government and governing bodies that they use to control and these other nations. And like they said, they use the word the American Empire. All right, Ministry of Colonies of the American Empire, and also it said up against the people, against progressive people and independent anti-imperialist government. So anybody that's up against Esau, they have these conglomerations, these confederacy of people. Esau is banded together against everybody that's against him and his rulership. All right. Finishing this here article up, it says the OAS Democratic Charter, adopted in 2001, stipulates that any unconstitutional alteration or interruption of the democratic order in a member state constitutes an insurmountable obstacle for its further participation in its work. The U.S. representative at the Assembly, Carlos Trujillo, applauded the move, saying that he is glad that we are recognizing democracy matters. All right, so basically, America's over here is bullying these other nations. They want to step in when things are not necessarily not benefiting them, or when they can see a way they can be benefited. They see that they almost got this country choked almost all the way out. It's like you got somebody in the head, like when you watching wrestling back in the day, right? And then you see your favorite wrestler put the other wrestler, or Hulk Hogan. Back in the days, you see whatever wrestler got Hulk Hogan in the headlock, in the sleeper hole, and then you see Hulk Hogan and he's dying out, losing strength, and the ref is going over there raising one arm drop and fall out, the arm drop and fall out. That's basically how America is doing these countries right now, especially Venezuela, and a lot of other countries as well, but especially Jake countries, and South America and stuff like that, Central and South America. But here in Venezuela, it's like I said with the Hulk Hogan thing, they lifting up an arm, and you can still see his chest breathing, but he's basically unconscious, and they basically got him to the point to right before he's about to die. So America's trying to push forward with this. All right. It says, funny how they use the same analogy here. It says Washington has been strangling Venezuela's crippling economy with sanctions since the Latin American country was rocked by a sprite of violent anti-government protests last year. Maduro blames country woes, which includes soaring inflation, recession, as well as food and water shortages, on the economic war waged by the criminal mafia and Washington against his country. So he's flat out telling you, man, hey, look, these Edomites over here in America, they basically thugs, man. They come over here cutting off, putting sanctions on our country and on other countries so they don't trade with us, cutting off us from the rest of the world so we can't import any resources, any goods to feed our people. We can't export and sell our oil so we can prosper as a nation. So what are we left to do now? Starve out. You left us out to starve out, Just like in ancient days when nations used to go to war. They didn't just run up into another man's kingdom. They would cut off the water supply first. Then they would cut off the food supply. Then once they got real weak, after they got weak and they would starve to death and eat each other and stuff like that, after a while they would just go in and clean up the rest of the remaining survivors who was too weak to fight, And that's what you see going on in modern day today in Venezuela, all right? Let me read this paragraph again. It says Washington has been strangling Venezuela's crippling economy with sanctions since the Latin American country was rocked by a spate of violent anti-government protests last year. Maduro blames the country's woes, which include soaring inflation, recession, as well as food and water shortage, on the economic war waged by the criminal mafia in Washington against his country. On Tuesday, Maduro accused the U.S. of infiltrating key positions of the state-run oil industry in a bid to control strategic information as he pledged to continue his economic counteroffensive. All right. And so, like I said, man, this is further going into Esau cutting off Venezuela from being able to eat and stuff like that. All right, but all this throughout the whole the spirit is all the doings of the Most High. He's bringing on that Jacob's trouble, and also actually, let me grab this one precept real quick. It's in Matthew's. Speaking on the times that we in and why this is important. Oh, come on, this is it right here. Let me see. Well, I'll just read this right here. Spirit, we right there on it. This is Matthew 24, starting in verse 3. And he sat upon the Mount of Olives, and the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? All right, so the topic at hand with this question is, it says, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? So the signs of the Yahweh's coming and the end of the world. All right, and Yahushua answered and said unto them, Take heed no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Hamashiach, and shall deceive many. Okay, and you shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, in which we hear about these things all the time. Well, the wars that we hear about, we hear about currency wars, China, Russia, trade wars with the tariffs on steel and things like that, sanctions on these nations with oil and stuff like that. All right, like with Venezuela as well, and then rumors of wars. You hear things like Kim Jong-un and Iran and the nuclear stuff, rumors of wars. See that you not be troubled, for these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, okay? And now a nation against nation is talking about things like Jacob versus Esau, two different nationalities of people, okay? And kingdom against kingdom, all right? And that's talking about basically two different governments, all right? Now, you can have, like, for instance, you have, let me think. You have basically Russia and America going at each other right now, and they both Edomites, all right? So they wouldn't fall under a nation against a nation, because that would be like Jacob versus Esau. But then you have kingdom against kingdom, being like basically two different governments, all right? And in this case, America and Russia, they both Edomite governments, but it's nevertheless it's two different governments, all right? It says, and there shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in diverse places. All right, now let me just touch on the earthquakes, the earthquakes and the volcanoes. You see the earthquake or the volcano and the earthquake happening in Guatemala. That's a huge one. That's like the city of what is it called? Mount Vesuvius in Pompeii. Back in Rome in those days, where those people was covered in ash. YouTube that Pompeii. All right, Mount Vesuvius, and look at the documentaries on that. You're gonna soon have another documentary of that same thing happening, what you see in Guatemala. All right, the news headlines coming out over today, and tomorrow we'll see the outcomes of that over the last couple of days. And also earthquakes happening everywhere. And the pestilence. You have all these super viruses and super bugs and super STDs, all kind of different viruses coming out nowadays. But also it says there should also be famines. All right. Now, famine ain't necessarily just like a bunch of locusts ate up your crops, but also, as you see in like places like Cuba or Venezuela, where America cuts them off or put sanctions on these nations to where they can't trade, they can't bring in money, they can't like in the article I was reading, how America has a stronghold on state-run oil. All right, now Venezuela got the second largest reserves of oil on the planet Earth. But if they can't control or rule or sell, or they're not in control of their oil, then it's not really theirs. So it's just like you rent an apartment, and they tell you, they got certain rules. You can't paint this. You can't tear down these walls. Like, yeah, this is your apartment. This is where you stay at. Somebody say that take you to your house, but it ain't really yours, because you can't remodel it. You can't, do this and do that from it. You can't rent out your apartment to somebody else and reap the benefits off of it. Okay? You just stay there. Same with in Venezuela with this here oil they got over there, all right? Causing these famines over there where the people are eating the zoo animals and things like that, all right? Let me see. Actually, I'm gonna pull this here out. Right here. This Matthew's 24 and 32. Now this is, the importance of looking at these here these news these news articles and filtering them through the scriptures. All right, Matthew's 24 and 32. Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and he putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. Okay, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. All right, so now let me read this down here for the scoffers. It says, but of the day and of the hour knoweth no man, but let me reread that. Verse 36. But of the day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. Okay, so no man knows, not even Yahushua knows the exact day or the hour. All right, but what is he saying over here in verse 32? Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When the branch is yet tender, he putteth forth his leaves, and you know summer is nigh. All right. So basically, he's telling you based off of agriculture, and farming and stuff like that. But in a more simpler term, all you jakes riding in cars and stuff like that, or all you jakes who got a cell phone, right? If you look in the top right hand corner of my screen, you see my battery. It says it's red right now. All you just watching this who got a cell phone know what that's signaling. All right, it's signaling my battery's getting low. Okay, and when I see that, I know that the end of my phone life is at hand. When it get down to the 5%, it keep ringing off and give me certain signals and signs. It's letting me know that something is an action or a reaction is about to occur. All right, and the same when we start seeing these things. Like he said when we read in verse 2, I think it was. It says or verse 3. At the bottom it says, "What shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world?" All right, and these are the parable of the fig tree. These are the signs that we should be looking at. All right, so it says now, Matthew 24 and 32. Now learn the parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and he putteth forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise, when you shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the door. All right, and what things? The things that we read about, up here at the top. Speaking about the earthquakes, the famines, and the pestilence in diverse places. All right, and the wars and rumors of wars and all these different things. All right, and where are you going to see these things? Where he says, therefore watch. You have to watch the news articles. The news that's on, not going to be on your mainstream media. You have to kind of dig for it. You have to show do your due diligence. And do your research in these things. All right. Lord willing, this here lesson was edifying. Until next time, I say, call halal Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah. Double honors to the apostles and the elders, a great millstone, that taught me this truth and that rule well. A citation and much love for you. I can push this truth and sincerity in the four corners of the earth. Stay strong. Shalom.